everyone, and thank you for joining me today as I interview the Honorable Prime Minister Mitchell of Grenada. It is such a pleasure to have you, Prime Minister. And first of all, congratulations on your election win last year. It's been a long time waiting to have you, so I'm really grateful and I'm looking forward to an amazing discussion with you this morning.
Thank you, Marla. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry about the long wait, but I suppose as the new Prime Minister, never been in politics before, the learning curve has been steep, but it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's just get right into it, Prime Minister. Tell me, what are your thoughts around what are the major challenges facing your country right now?
All right. Well, I think that we can summarize perhaps the major ones as, in a sense, economic and social. I think on the economic front, like most governments, Grenada have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. So we are coming out of obviously declining growth of negative growth in tourism in particular, which we depend on heavily. So that has impacted both employment as well as economic growth. The government prior to that, going as far back as 2013, would have been in a self-imposed structural adjustment program, which would have meant one, significant increases in taxes, two, significant belt tightening from a spending perspective for the government. And so when that happens, obviously in a small island where the government is a major, perhaps the major contributor to the economy, it does struggle to some extent with overall economic growth. Now that we perhaps have seen, I hope, the back of the pandemic, growth has resumed, obviously, in the tourism sector in particular. The cruise ships are coming back, the hotels have reopened, so there's economic growth projected there. In agriculture, in construction, growth is also resuming. Last year we had some decline in fishing, and we're hoping to reverse that this year. But overall, I think the challenge is both from a medium and a long-term perspective is the slow pace of growth, and more critically, the in some instances, almost non-existent rise in real income of our citizens. Obviously, inflation, again, because of the COVID issues with freight and compounded now by the Russian-Ukraine conflict. We're importing inflation because of import bill, particularly for construction materials, particularly for food, is significant. And so we've imported inflation while real wages have not really gone up, particularly given the unemployment that we face from COVID. So on a macroeconomic level, that's the sort of immediate challenge we're grappling with. But I think on a more medium to long-term level, the question of what will give us the sort of growth and the sort of real rise in people's income is the challenge that we have to face. And to that extent, I think we have to relook some foundational issues, our food security, our education system, our health system, as well as our infrastructure system. So I think those are some of the more key areas that we have to tackle, not just in Grenada, but I think certainly within the OECS and in CARICOM as a whole, because we face similar challenges. On the social front, I think marginalization of groups in the society, particularly young people, because statistics show certainly in Grenada, and I suspect in most OECS countries, that the poorest group of persons are persons leaving school and perhaps in the early 20s. Most persons are coming out of school, your parents are telling you it's time to start fending for yourselves. You don't have the skill set to get you into the job market where you work for any significant sums of money. You are probably not inheriting any assets from your parents that would allow you to jumpstart. And so you find poverty impact significantly on the youth population. And with that poverty comes obviously sometimes a sense of desperation. You then have to deal with issues like drugs, alcohol, the risk for crime, and deviant social behavior. So I think, Grenada to a lesser extent, or perhaps the least extent, but many of our countries, even within the OECS and certainly the CARICOM, are struggling with the level of gun violence that, in our communities, and that's a major challenge that we face. Again, not our own way, because we don't manufacture guns, but they come to the region from North America, principally. So I think socially, that's one of the major challenges we face, keeping our islands safe and peaceful. Secondly, we obviously still have a major issue, I think, with gender-based violence and violence against children. That's an issue that is still, in my view, too common in Grenada, and I suspect also common within the OECS. So there has to be some significant re-education and relearning in terms of how men in particular interact with women, and how adults in particular interact with children. Because I think the resort to physical violence is still almost a reflex behavior by adults who are parenting in the region. So I think that's one of the issues we face. On the health side, the real pandemic is non-communicable diseases.
Yep.
We have an epidemic of hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, obesity. So again, a lot of it is perhaps traced to our history in terms of our diet, as well as the implication of, again, food and lifestyle that is perhaps not indigenous to us, and the challenges our health systems are not built to cope with that. So I think on the health side, that's a major factor. And then food security. Although traditionally we were agrarian societies, I mean, we were organized on a plantation system where we grew crops essentially to export. Once these have collapsed, in Grenada's case, cocoa, nutmeg, bananas, bananas principally because of the approach taken at the WTO, cocoa and nutmegs partly because of pests, and in the case of nutmegs, the hurricanes. We have not really focused back on growing, I think, food for ourselves. Net effect is it's easy and perhaps even cheaper to just import everything, and that has left us quite vulnerable, as COVID-19 has shown. Not just insufficient food, but very expensive food as well, and in some instances very unhealthy food.
Exactly.
That's the other challenge we face.
That's a lot for one new prime minister to deal with. but you look well, so I'm assuming that you're handling it very well. And then you layer on top of all of that the climate crisis, right? Which I'm sure this morning I look outside and I see tons of sargassum. I mean, people think of the climate crisis as being hurricanes and storms and rising sea levels, but also you have that slow creep of sargassum every single day that's affecting us. So yeah, that's a lot, Prime Minister, on your plate to deal with. So tell me some of the policy agenda items and reforms that you are implementing or hope to implement during your tenure to address these challenges.
Right. So I think I think there are two foundational issues that we are looking to tackle. One is education, the reform of our education system, particularly our curricula. There has been a marked absence of skills training.
Right.
Education system. I mean, in Grenada, say for one institution that is essentially run by the churches, called New Life Organization. In our mainstream school system, there's very little skills training, or if it exists, it's ad hoc, patchy. It's not systematic, and there's no follow through in terms of making sure that the skills effectively are linked to the private sector, and that our students are able to be deployed into the workforce. And so we believe that there's significant opportunities for us to focus on skills training, which we believe makes it far easier for young persons in particular to be deployed into the workforce, as well as to, if it comes to that, to find employment outside of Grenada. I know oftentimes we complain about brain drain, but certainly in principle, I have no difficulty with islands that have excess skills being a net export of labor, because invariably remittances, etc., come back to Ireland. So addressing the skills gap, addressing curriculating in a sense of curriculum, I think is key. But adding to the curriculum, digital skills, information technology, I think is absolutely crucial as well. And because the Caribbean and Grenada by extension is so small and our population is so small, to me the focus has to be on creating citizens who are elite citizens, whose education, and I don't just mean it in an academic tertiary sense, but whose education put them in a position where they can compete globally, because to me that's really the only natural advantage we have as a small population. We simply can't be a supplier of cheap labor because we can't supply it in enough quantities, and we can't compete with India or China or Vietnam, I mean, or Nigeria. So to me, for us to really have a sustained civilization, we have to educate our people. We have to make sure that our education system is constantly being refined or altered to suit what happens in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as the case may be. And I think regrettably, our education system is largely still colonial.
Very much so.
I'm pretty sure if I go back to school, they're teaching in the same methodology, the same approach as when I was taught, and I suspect if my parents go back, it's the same thing. And So it's a societal issue we have to talk about, because to get that buy-in from everyone, from the teachers, from the students, from the population, we have to admit that our education system is not serving us as well as we would want. And while it has produced traditional brilliant intellectuals, we need more than that.
Yes.
And so that's one area that I think we have to focus on. And that includes, for example, our approach to agriculture, or I call it food production. Because again, that is key for our security and our survivability. And so I think the education system itself needs to focus on things like agriculture, not just in the growing of food sense, but in the production, packaging, preservation, storage, and export of food. And from a research point of view as well, helping us to address what are some of the key crops that we can grow or find new crops to grow. Because I think that's one of the challenges we face. Certainly, for example, bananas was only introduced into Grenada after Hurricane Janet in 1955. Prior to that, we never grew bananas. And it was a response to the need to have a crop that grew and produced in a much shorter time. And
right.
Nutmegs. We had a hurricane in 2004 that literally wiped out all of our GDP, all of our forests, all of our agricultural crops. And we have not introduced or made an attempt to research and find alternative crops that could have been grown in a much shorter space of time. And that's just an example, in my view, of how I feel we've suffered from some neglect to some extent in terms of really trying to address the issues we face. So on the education front, I think that's key. And again, it links to the whole question of how we view our food security, how we view agriculture, and how we can deploy technology to assist us. And that includes getting our regional institutions, University of the West Indies, for example, to really focus a bit more, in my view, on some of those ever-present challenges that we face. We can't just keep spewing out lawyers and competence, and there has to be
and economists,
well, we probably need the economists. I'm not so sure.
Probably. But no, I think you're right.
Yeah, so I think the focus has to be on an education system that is more geared towards problem solving and solving all problems. So I think that's one area. On the issue of health, I mean, in Grenada's case specifically, the entire health system needs significant investment. And we feel that if we can find the resources to make that investment, that it will redound to our tourism market. It will redound to our education services. As you're aware, we've got St. George's University on island, which is a premier offshore medical and vet university, which has also started offering arts and basic sciences to regional and local students as well. But the medical students in particular leave to do their rotations outside of Grenada. And we feel if we can get a state-of-the-art hospital that affords these students the opportunity to do the rotations in Grenada, which means they stay on island for an additional 2 years, and it certainly allows our citizens access to, I think, a supply of medical skilled personnel that otherwise would not be available. And I think it allows us then to push our tourism product even more by assuring Grenadians in the diaspora and assuring tourists in general that you have, at least at a macro level, first-class health facilities that would encourage people to want to come. And we hope then that allows for these services to be available to our citizens. And we think that model ought to work because the truth is healthcare is very expensive. I don't know practically that we can pay for all of it without some form of subsidization in the sense of having tourists or even, as I said, medical students doing the rotations, etc., which would help to address the costs. The cost is steep. But at a primary level, we're going to embark upon a massive education campaign to address the lifestyle that our citizens, regrettably have fallen prey to in terms of the failure to exercise, in the excessive consumption of sugar, salt, alcohol, and a lot of the imported food. So from an education point of view, at a primary healthcare, we think prevention is better than cure. So we really want to focus a lot on our primary healthcare. And we are also embarking upon fiscal policy measures to support that. So for example, in this year's budget, I guess you can call it a sugar tax, but we have imposed tax. We've also increased the taxes on alcohol and cigarettes because we want to take a coordinated approach. We know it's not just the fiscal measures. We know education is going to be critical. We know getting buy-in from the citizenry is going to be critical. But we really do want to explain to our citizens that it is far cheaper from a primary healthcare perspective to make the choices that allows you to live healthier.
Right.
You know, the cost of kidney failure and getting dialysis almost guarantees that your lifespan in Grenada is going to reduce significantly, simply because it is very expensive and the average citizen simply can't afford it. And we've seen people in their 20s and 30s now having, kidney failure and needing to get
Wow.
challenge we face. So we think with education, with some fiscal measures that, over the medium term, we should be able to begin to address the challenge of the NCDs. We also believe a regional approach is required, because it's not just Grenada, it's Jamaica, it's Barbados. We're not in a war zone, but we've become the amputation capital of the world when you look at
Yes.
the number of amputees that we have. So I think, and again, it means unproductive society. If people have to go
Yes.
for dialysis treatment, if people have to stay home because of high blood pressure, if people are falling prey to strokes, you basically have a significant sick days that you're losing. And so again, the ability to, and you have to still help provide food, electricity, and water for persons who are in those positions. So both from an economic point of view, from a social and a health point of view, we think prevention is clearly cheaper than the cures, and there are no cures really for a lot of what we're talking about here. It's just a question of managing people's lifestyle. So we think that is critical from a healthcare perspective. And just going back to education a bit, and the whole question of gender, one of the things we've tried to do from a macroeconomic point of view is to begin to gender target our policies, to collect data on how our policies are specifically impacting women and young people in particular. And we've made it mandatory as part of our whole fiscal outlook to make sure that our programs or projects specifically addresses how it impacts women, and make sure that we can collect that data so that we can better attune our policies to impact women in particular, and to make sure that we can empower them.
That's amazing, Prime Minister. Congratulations for that. I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I think it's the stats show, for example, that when it comes to unemployment, that women are significantly negatively affected. Women still lag behind men when it comes to income. And then on top of that, you have the crisis of gender-based violence against women. And women are still primarily the caregivers and the rearers of our children. And so it's important for us to understand that, and to understand how that impacts economic growth, behavior, and the whole relationship between men and women, adults and children. But we can't be guessing those things. We have to be in a position where we're actually paying attention and collecting the data so that we can analyze it and then better target our policies to suit those challenges. So we part, for example, the Spotlight program, which is in conjunction with the United Nations, which targets gender-based violence against women. We are continuing this program. As I said, many of the other programs that we have a specific need to make sure that we tag the data so that we can report it and analyze it.
That's fantastic, because I always say that women are the most underutilized natural resource in this region, because we participate in the labor force less. As you pointed out, we earn less for the same work. And on top of paid work, we have 2 to 3 times more unpaid care work in the home. So supporting families is important to getting women out in the workforce and making sure they're productive. So I'm happy that that you're focusing on collecting the data, Prime Minister. Tell me about digitization, because I know the World Bank is supporting this effort, and I know that Grenada certainly was one of the countries in the Caribbean that emphasized this as a transformational tool. So tell me what's happening.
Right. So we've got a number of projects in the digitization field that we're trying to, in a sense, they were in all over the place. And what we are in the process of doing is pretty much centralizing them under an ICT department. And we're starting first with the government. Ideally, we want to make the government paperless. We've
Very
already
good.
to take steps to address that. So, for example, as of this budget, our policy is that there should be no printing of any document beyond 5 pages. The cabinet office is a paperless cabinet office. The Prime Minister's office is on its way to becoming paperless. Certainly in my office, things like printers have become obsolete 2 days after I entered the office. It certainly saves paper. Paper is very expensive. It saves space. and having pretty much everything online gives you access to 24 hours, so it certainly should improve your productivity. So we really want to make the government itself paperless. We also think that by making the government digital, it actually helps minimize the risk of corruption, because to a large extent it removes a lot of what I call discretionary power that persons may have, which may allow them to abuse it or to extract from the citizens' favors in exchange for doing their jobs. It certainly increases efficiency and
Yes.
saves from a cost point of view. But in terms of government services themselves, so for example, we are hoping that come 2024, we are able to move more of the government services online, so that citizens should be able to pay all their taxes, or as many of the taxes as possible online, without obviously having to come and line up at the Treasury or Sub-Treasury office to do so. So that's one of the goals, is as much as possible move as many of the government services which people need to pay for online. That is part of it. We are also hoping to roll out adult digitization classes to our citizens, because we recognize that if we're going to move
Excellent.
services online, that we have to go to the communities, give people access to computers, give them access to computer literacy, teach them about it, so that it becomes easier for them to accept, because it's really a change management process that we will be going through. And if we don't get the buy-in from our citizens, we don't train them, then they will obviously resist it. We are looking at, for example, in some of our social safety net programs, there's a program called SEED, for example, where monthly cash transfers are given to citizens. We are looking to see how we can move this online, so that citizens simply have a card rather than having to go and line up in the sun and wait for hours to get the sums. And again, we feel that by doing so, it will help citizens to feel more comfortable with
Right.
the digital space that we're entering. So it's an array of things we're looking at. We are hoping to ensure that all our schools, although they already have it, that the internet broadband is beefed up, not just in schools, but in all community centers, in all public spaces where people congregate or access, for example, at the beach, at our community parks, to ensure that persons are able to be online. We are currently in discussions, and I think we're at contract stage with Flow, to supply what I would call significantly discounted internet access to indigent homes. We're piloting with 500 to 800 homes, I believe, where all the citizens will be required to do is to pay $20 for the broadband service. Flow and the government through our NTRC will basically pay for the balance. And we're hoping to target particularly homes with women, with children of school age, to ensure that the kids have access to internet at school. And we're also going to be looking to partner with persons to provide them with the devices as well, because again, we have to be prepared to be resilient in the event we face any COVID type similar pandemics in the future, so that we can automatically go back online and ensure that the students have access. Because it's one thing to say have classes online, it's another thing if the students have internet at home, or the quality of the internet is not stable, or they don't have the devices, etc.
Digital divide, right?
Right.
Closing that digital divide. Excellent.
So that's part of the overall approach that we're taking. It's a lot of work, obviously, and a lot of moving parts,
Right.
because just addressing the digitization of the government services itself requires significant change management within the government and within the public sector, because you need employees who are prepared to undergo the training. And most of the stuff is user friendly, but it's the mindset. If people are resistant to it, they will feel it. So I think we have to spend some time on the change management so that people understand what we're trying to do is actually make their lives easier, make their lives simple. And it has significant, in my view, upsides in terms of when you go to government offices, you see offices stacked with paper, cramped environment, and air condition is not working, and then you have brittle paper getting into the atmosphere. You have to breathe that. So again, if you are able to move a lot of that online, in my view, makes for a more elegant, cleaner working environment. It certainly frees up space. You don't have to worry about fire and covering data and so on, because again, it's in the cloud and you can get it. So I think it's really explaining those advantages to people, so that more people can embrace, in a sense, the technology and use it for benefit. So we recognize we have to start with the government as an example, but we also have to encourage the private sector to do so, and we have to have the sort of educational classes at the community levels that will encourage the citizens to take a more active role in adopting the use of technology.
No, and you're absolutely right. Congratulations on those initiatives to bridge the digital divide. but also, yes, change is, human beings are resistant to change, right? And anything that takes them out of their comfort zone. But I think with an inspirational leader, and with things starting to sort of accelerate and snowball, it comes to a point where everybody is realizing we have to get on board this or we get left behind. And so I hope that effect takes hold soon enough. For my last question, really, if there is any other sustainable development or economic transformation issue that you want to discuss, but I would also like to highlight the fact that, and congratulations again for this, but that you, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Barbados, from a regional cooperation perspective, has been making progress on this issue of food security in particular. I'm very pleased about the amendment to the revised treaty that allows a few countries to move ahead with an initiative, even if all don't want to go ahead. I think that's a very important initiative to help unlock regional cooperation. So congratulations to you and the others for that. So, but yes, if you can talk a little bit about that and any other economic transformation developments that you want to share with us.
Sure, yeah. So, well, I think I want to single out the president of Guyana, because he has really led in an excellent manner on the whole question of food security within CARICOM. And I think, I call it the coalition of the willing.
Yes.
Sometimes there are just natural synergies between two islands or a couple of islands where it is more likely you would get traction on a particular issue. And so we have to have the ability and the flexibility to be able to move forward. And hopefully others will catch up as they see the benefits to doing so. So I think Guyana has really led the way in terms of advocacy, but not just advocacy, in terms of actual implementation of plans and projects, both from a financing perspective, from an ideas perspective, from a resource allocation, from a technical perspective, and has really encouraged Grenada, Barbados, St. Vincent to get on board in terms of the several initiatives that is in place to reduce our fuel import bill by 25%, as we say, in the next couple of years. That's a major challenge. It's going to be difficult, but I think we have to aspire to reach it. So I'm really happy that the initiative is on board. And I think, again, we have to spend some time educating our citizens. We have to spend some time, I think, crucially as well, with the business community, because our trading patterns are traditional. And if a quota in particular makes money from a particular trading pattern, they're not going to want to walk that back simply because from a government perspective, they're concerned about our food import bill. And so we have to help them find alternatives, alternative source markets, particularly source markets that are closer to home. And one way of addressing this is the whole question of transportation and connectivity between the islands. As you know, that's a major, major challenge for us, not just in terms of the movement of people, but in terms of the movement of goods. And I think if we have to tackle that as part of the food security challenge we face, because I think there are significant opportunities within CARICOM for us to significantly increase trade. But because of the lack of connectivity, there's significant spoilage, for example, in places like Dominica, when it comes to fruits, vegetables, ground provisions, and places like St. Kitts and Antigua can't get it. Simply of the lack of connectivity, and in turn you turn to importing grain from Ukraine or from some far-flung part of the world where you have no control over the price, and as we can see when there are external shocks, you have no control over the supply either. So I think it's going to be very critical from a CARICOM level for us to help address this whole question of connectivity, because I think that is significantly linked to, or in a sense, poor performance on the trade side within CARICOM. But closer to home, I think we have to look at Central America and we have to look at South America more. South America certainly can feed itself and can help feed us. And we are closer to South America than we are to Europe and North America. And again, so Guyana, I think, is a natural gateway in light of the economic development that's taking place, therefore, to Brazil, to Argentina, to all of the countries in South America, and for us to relook our traditional trading routes, or traditional trading partners. I know, again, we feel to some extent in that, as Caribbean citizens, we don't speak a second language those of us who speak English in particular,
Yes.
as frequently as we should. And I think given that our neighbors, our single biggest block of neighbors speak Spanish, I
Yes.
think we really should make a concerted effort to ensure that as many of our students, 1 in every 2 Caribbean students in the next, in my view, 20 years is bilingual. Because I think once you're bilingual, it makes it easier for trade, it makes it easier for travel, and for us to do business together. I call it the arrogance of speaking English. Once people speak English, they feel they don't need to speak a second language.
Yes.
But that's something that I think we have to also address in our education system. But people are more likely to speak a second language if they have the opportunity to travel and trade
Yes.
with people who speak the second language. So I think those are 2 areas that I think we need to address and has the potential, I think, to be transformative from a regional perspective as well. But the other area that I think for Grenada that has the potential to be truly transformative, and I suspect the entire Caribbean, is the creative economy.
Mm.
We have, I think Jamaica and to some extent Trinidad and Tobago has demonstrated the power and economic benefits of the creative economy. I think the rest of us have kind of lagged behind significantly. And so we've taken, particularly given the youthfulness of our population, we've taken a deliberate policy agenda to help jumpstart the creative economy in Grenada. So we have, for example, taking fiscal measures as of this budget to allow anyone in the creative economy who registers at the creative economy desk to basically have duty-free importation of all, free of all taxes on all equipment or supplies related to the creative economy, from art supplies to digital cameras, you name it.
Right.
Giving
Excellent.
those 12 months an opportunity to bring that equipment in, bring the supplies in, so that they get the opportunity to be able to at least have the resource material that would allow them to develop their skill set. We are forming a creative desk in the Ministry of Economic Development to have persons register, and then we will be launching a public seminar to create awareness about particularly the commercial and monetary aspects of the creative economy, because I think we view the creative economy as a hobby in the Caribbean
Yeah.
and not as something that we should really be monetizing. And intellectual property has no bounds. If you create your
Exactly.
intellectual property, you can monetize that worldwide. And we see it as one of the great levelers in terms of addressing challenges of our size and space and small population. And every now and then the examples are there. I mean, the Caribbean, let's take St. Lucia. St. Lucia has produced 2 Nobel laureates.
Yes.
Pound for pound, they're punching way above their weight. You take a place like Grenada, we produced, 400-meter gold, silver, and bronze medal winner. We produced a world javelin champion. I mean, we can talk about Jamaica, we can talk about Trinidad, but I don't think we link that to the monetizing that can arise from that. And I've even, we can talk about music or steel band or drama, or traditional mass. We don't monetize those things, and then we can talk about the art world. I think the Caribbean has some of in my view, at any rate, fantastic artists. But
Of
do we
course.
tell that there's a career in art, and do we support that? And what's the initiatives there? How do we link that to tourism? That sort of thing. So we really want to spend some time focusing on the creative economy. We're also going to have a fund that allows creatives to actually get grant funding or concessionary loans to help start their businesses. And then we want to engage the commercial sector, because too often we think the banks, the development banks, the commercial banks do not understand the creative space. So when someone comes to a loan, they really don't understand what you're telling them. They don't understand the business model of it. And so the likelihood that you get the loan is pretty slim. So we want to address this in 2 ways. One, from an education perspective, by engaging.
Yes.
So we're going to have a seminar in March, which brings together everybody to have the conversation about what the creative economy is about, how you can monetize it, etc. But at the same time, the government itself wants to have a creative economy fund, so that at least there's seed funding available for persons in the creative economy who may not be able to get funding from commercial or traditional financial avenues. So certainly, I think that's one area, given our youthfulness, that we really do believe we can use to help address not just employment, but I think a sense of self, a sense of awareness, a sense of who we are as Caribbean people, so that that sense of confidence and pride is maintained, and persons don't feel that in this big global world that I don't have a place or a niche to stand up.
Absolutely. As we say in Trinidad, we have to love up and hug up with culture, right?
Yes, indeed.
Because there's nobody like us, globally. Everybody has their own unique culture, of course, but I feel like our culture in the Caribbean is so rich,
Yeah.
and so diverse too across the Caribbean. And there's so much potential. So I agree with you and I congratulate you for that move, Prime Minister, because so many of us are stuck in that old traditional, dare I say, even colonial way of thinking of what is of value,
Yes.
whereas these things like culture, literature, sport, art is of tremendous value.
Absolutely. And I think if we look at the Caribbean, I think that to me, those issues are more defining than
Yes,
a lot of the other things we try and place value to, or multi-ethnic, multi-plural societies, the fact that we are peaceful, there's a lot we can teach the world, you know, uh,
exactly.
and I think not just teach, but I think monetize as well. I fantasize about the Caribbean being the zone of peace where all warring parties can come and sit down with us, and we can help them mediate and solve the conflicts. And
Exactly.
I say that, and I mean that because I say to people, for example, if we take something like diplomacy, and that's what I mean about education. There is no diplomatic school in the Caribbean per se.
No.
People go elsewhere and get training, but I'm saying what's stopping us from a CARICOM perspective through the University of Western is through various intellectuals to say, let us develop a cadre of diplomats who literally would serve the world to address uh, all of the hotspots and help them as neutral persons to be able to come to terms with some of the issues they may be fighting over. And I'm saying you
Yeah.
take Ireland, for example, they have effectively created this niche for themselves where every time big international powers are warring, they fly them to Switzerland, they sit down and they negotiate. That's tourism.
Right.
That's
It is.
and so we have to be creative in terms of how we look at ourselves, given the small size of our populations, the fact that we're islands, fantastic weather, the fact that we have a lot of hotels and we have tourism, and we
And
can get
we're the happiest people on earth. I feel like that's
absolutely.
something, that I've said before, we should export, because not there's so many people all over the world who when they come here, they're happy because we're happy.
Yes,
Despite everything,
yes,
we're happy people. So no,
indeed.
I agree. The Caribbean way of life and the Caribbeanness is to me of tremendous value, and I agree with you completely. So but Prime Minister, again, I can't thank you enough for spending this time with me to discuss, your ideas about how you take your country forward, and indeed how you take the region forward. Some very, very, progressive ideas and novel ideas that you shared with us today, and I appreciate that. I'm hoping to be in Grenada in April, so I will
Oh,
look you up.
fantastic. I hope we get you and you here.
For sure, it will be great to meet you in person. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing more about you. Best of luck to you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you.